In order to save taxpayer money, it comes down to two things: competence and caring. When you add more competence and caring, you get a better deal for the American people.
He uses the word, it's caring. Yeah. It's a certain competence, but I think it's more caring.
If you add either ingredient, either competence or caring, you'll get a better outcome.
Either, just anything. Bring any positive attribute to the table, and then we can talk. But in the meantime, the line for mental health treatment starts over there. Please, you people, what's the matter you? You gotta know respect. A very good Wednesday to you, and welcome to Hump Day. Always an interesting day in the Clinton household. Hillary Clinton once again waking up face down in a pool of her own dried vomit, laying unconscious, mouth agape, next to an empty 1-gallon cardboard box of cheap New Zealand Chardonnay. Not even the good stuff, you know, New Zealand. Great many absurdities going on today, courtesy of the Democrat Party. A brilliant listener that I spoke to a short time ago, Rick, laying out some fun stuff and thanking Lee Zeldin, which I think is a lot of fun. Great stuff. Environmental Protection Agency, all of that. Wonderful things. And our money. Now, Elon Musk wants access with his high IQ minions to Treasury Department computer systems and where else? Let's look at the Environmental Protection Agency. Let's look at the government agencies that the Democrat Party has been stealing our money and abusing our tax dollars for so long now. And if you want to take a look, just lift the sheets up there. Woohoo! See what's going on down there. Lift up the hood, take a look at the edge, and then the Democrats will become furious with you, absolutely enraged. You can't look at the $241 million that we spent on transgender animal programs, because then you might say it out loud and we might be discovered. But Rick, talking about a wonderful fact, Lee Zeldin, saying, no, we're not going to fund this crazy stuff that you guys are funding. And I went and started doing a little bit of research. Because the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, they were tasked by the Biden administration, by the Democrats, to distribute huge sums of money to radical left-wing anti-American groups because they represent the interests of the Democratic Party. And one of these radical groups, the Climate Justice Alliance. Those words don't go together. Climate justice. What does that mean, you little fascists? But it turns out this hotbed of lunacy is just another left-wing front group. And as Rick was pointing out, and I went to the website for the Alliance for Climate Justice, and their homepage, the headline is Free Palestine. Now, what does that have to do with the weather? Nobody knows. but the left knows. So the main page at their website for the Climate Justice Alliance, the banner headline, white on black, is Free Palestine in giant letters, smaller letters below it, is a climate justice issue. That shows that they're mentally ill, right? The path to climate justice travels through a free Palestine. No, it doesn't. These are unrelated matters. One is a terrorist group. The other is the weather. You people are mentally ill, quite obviously. Together with Movement Generation, they're very big on digestion. They're focused on proper digestive processes. Together with Movement Generation and Survival Media Agency, radical extreme left-wing terrorist groups, Climate Justice Alliance created a short video that uses the anti-colonial framework to show how climate justice and the liberation of Palestine are connected. That means killing the Jews, wiping out the Jews. Got to have no Jews. You know how they don't like Jews, just like the Socialist Workers' Party in Europe in the 1930s and 40s. Our hope is creating this new resource is to mobilize additional sectors of the climate movement. It's a climate movement to fight to free Palestine. What are you talking about? And begin to shift the policies to the mainstream climate movement from carbon fundamentalism to climate justice. All right, you guys are mentally ill, all right? So Lee Zeldin has decided that it was time to take a look at that, and that's a wonderful thing. Now, here's what we learned, though, that the Democrats, the Biden administration, they took $600 million, and gave it to these radical left-wing groups that are not climate groups at all. They're extremists, genocidal, anti-Semite, pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist groups. And the Democrat Party has been funneling millions and millions of dollars to them. Joe Biden has, and he should probably be in handcuffs. So the Democrats are very upset because Lee Zeldin said, well, wait a minute. The warning for progressive groups, ? This is just crazy, the philanthropy.com. A warning for progressive groups, ? Trump yanks $50 million from a climate justice nonprofit. They'll get rich off of these things they call nonprofits with our tax dollars. The Climate Justice Alliance, that's the one that says Free Palestine on their homepage, right, was among 11 organizations chosen by the EPA under Joe Biden to distribute $600 million to nonprofits. It was the first to be completely defunded. I certainly hope it's not the last, and people really should be in handcuffs. And I mean Joe Biden and his EPA administrator. The closure last week of a $50 million federal grant, right? Just amazing stuff. A program that supports climate change solutions, which is Free Palestine, wipe Israel off the face of the earth. In low-income communities, they're not in a low-income community. Look how much money they have. Could signal what is to come for government-funded nonprofits at odds with President Trump's ideological positions. Well, no rational American would say, let's give $50 million to change the weather for climate to an anti-Israel, pro-Hamas group called Climate Justice. What are you kidding me? So the Climate Justice Alliance, a left-leaning national nonprofit, was among 11 grant-making organizations, they're grant-receiving organizations, chosen by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency under Joe Biden in 2023 to distribute $600 million to nonprofits and other groups, meaning left-wing radical hate groups that are being funded with U.S. tax dollars on the order of hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. All right, $500 million is $500 million. Another $100 million is a lot of money, and you fund them, and it turns out that they're pro-jihad groups, and they funnel their money to jihad groups. And the Democrats are good with that because they're the ones doing the funding. The Intercept has a story on this, too. Who is it? Akila Lacey has the story at The Intercept. Trump's EPA kills grant to climate nonprofit over its support for Palestine. Well, again, rather unrelated. In a tweet announcing his attack on the Climate Justice Alliance, EPA head Lee Zeldin linked it to the group's protected speech about Palestine. Now, it's protected speech, but it's not protected funding. We're talking about millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that the Biden administration threw into a bucket for radical extremist, left-wing, genocidal anti-Semites to distribute our tax dollars, and then this dimwit at The Intercept is like, oh, sure, he's targeting nonprofits. The nonprofits are like genocidal lunatics, and you people are mentally ill. The Trump administration said that it canceled a federal grant to a climate nonprofit over the group's protected First Amendment speech. These are two unrelated issues. Yes, your First Amendment right to be a Nazi is protected. To be a genocidal Jew hater is protected. That is protected speech. That doesn't mean you're guaranteed hundreds of millions of tax dollars to fund terror groups. Isn't that amazing? So the Climate Justice Alliance, a nonprofit that organizes on climate issues in poor and indigenous communities, they're racists, was awarded a multi-million-dollar grant under former President Joe Biden's climate infrastructure package, whatever the hell that is. The Biden administration, however, later delayed that funding over the group's support for Palestine, The Intercept reported. Now, they're very upset because it was still in there, and Lee Zeldin, President Trump's EPA administrator, said, no, we're not going to fund Hamas with climate justice money that Joe Biden was funding. So now let's get back to the Democrats, because you know how they hate the Jews. And if you're a Jewish Democrat, just open a vein, because you'll speed things along. Pretty amazing stuff. If you're Jewish and a Democrat, you're extremely uninformed. You're horribly and terribly uninformed. Now let's go to what the Democrats were doing in Brooklyn last night, because mobs of violent criminals gathered in Brooklyn, New York last night in what has been described as the world's largest Hasidic Jewish community in Brooklyn. And what did they do? They attacked, you see, and some of them are Hamasites, right? Some of them are Hamasites, but some of them are just what they call liberals today, right? And they attacked the anti-Israel lunatics attacking in New York City, and the headline is, anti-Israel protest in New York City devolves into violence and mayhem, as you might expect. Several fights broke out as the agitators chanted, Zionists, go to hell. That's don't go to Israel, go to hell, you see, and waved Palestinian flags in the Borough Park neighborhood, Borough Park protest. And so here they are. They call themselves liberals, and they're closer to being fascists than any right-wing skinheads that they're going to find anywhere. A group of anti-Israel demonstrators descended on an Orthodox Jewish neighborhood in New York City on Tuesday, leading to violent clashes and chaotic scenes, according to reports and video. Were they part of the Climate Justice Alliance, and they know that good weather comes through a free Palestine? Here are several fights broke out, the agitators, and the protest was led by an anti-Israel Pal Auda, Pal-AWDA, that's Palestinian and Death to the Jews activist group, who said they were flooding Borough Park, the neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York, to demonstrate against the sale of stolen Palestinian land. Stolen Palestinian, run them over. I think you should have the right to run over protesters in the middle of the street. That should be the law. Congress should take that up. They said they were targeting an event that was selling real estate in Israel. They're genocidal fascists, and they call themselves liberals. They do. The crowd separated into three parts, the Times of Israel reported. The anti-Israel protesters, a group of pro-Israel counter-protesters, gather outside the barricades, while a crowd of Jewish residents, Orthodox residents, watched in horror because every Nacht is Kristallnacht, where today's Democrat Party is involved. Jewish Democrats, beware. You should be wearing armbands at this point. Sew something on your clothing to identify yourselves in public, because as Jewish Democrats, that's what you're advocating. I've got more on that and the attack on the Jews in Los Angeles, too, by people that self-describe as liberals, and they're all Democrats. You know that the all-new third-generation Eden Pure Thunderstorm air purifier is finally here, and it builds on the incredible success of the first two generations. They earn thousands of five-star reviews online. This new Thunderstorm uses two technologies that studies have shown help to kill up to 99.9% of bacteria and viruses in the air. Also slaps down dust and pet dander and smoke and all kinds of nastiness, helps you breathe better, and gets rid of odors, smelly odors. The Thunderstorm will get rid of any stinky smell, guaranteed. Talking about a musty basement, and smelly shoes, a teenager's room. And right now, you can save $200 on an Eden Pure Thunderstorm 3-pack for whole home protection. Put one in your kitchen, your bedroom, any place you like to breathe clean, fresh air. All you have to do is go to EdenPureDeals.com and use the discount code CHRIS3 to save $200 on 3 Eden Pure Thunderstorms. That's EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is CHRIS and the number 3. Yes, sir. Yeah, what is it with Democrats and anti-Semitism? I guess it's just the rise of their national socialist movement. Huh. Where have I heard that before? Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at WashingtonTimes.com/Chris. Yeah, so the violent mob in Brooklyn in an Orthodox Jewish neighborhood, they're jihadis and other Democrats. They call themselves liberals. See the Socialist Workers Party. All right, let's grab a quick call. Let's go to Matt calling from Rockville, Maryland. Matthew, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris.
Hey, Matt.
One of the things I noticed about all of the fraud that USAID is uncovering and the grants going here and there is very rarely, and I say that being generous because I haven't actually seen one, nothing is going to a right-wing advocacy, $4.9 million for the advocacy for Second Amendment for pregnant women, or, $8.2 million to look at the, effects of artificial hormones on the opposite gender. It is all on the left. And I think it was Representative Tim Burchett who said, this money is going to turn out to come back and be going to Democrats. And it kind of holds water because I don't see any of this money going to things that the right would agree with.
Well, you are 100% correct. You're absolutely on the money, as it were. Follow the money, and it all goes to the Democrat Party and their profound corruption. So the Biden White House threw $600 million of our tax dollars over to extreme left-wing, Jew-hating groups. And yesterday in Brooklyn, they had one of these radical groups. I don't know if the Climate Justice Alliance was there going after the Orthodox Jews in Brooklyn, but they were chanting in the streets that they have to go. And what are they? They have to go to hell because you can't go back to Israel, because the left-wingers here claim that they own Israel and they're going to give it to terrorists who are genocidal and would kill all of civilization. And they were chanting loony things in the streets of Brooklyn last night. And one man was arrested for assaulting a 61-year-old man, punching him in the face. They're waving their Palestinian flags. The Orthodox Jews looked on in horror as the Democrat Party and the so-called Palestinians launched another Kristallnacht, which they love so much because they're not liberals. That's the thing about these. Bernie Sanders is not a liberal. He's a Bolshevik. He's a commie. And the They call themselves liberals. They do. And the Nazis called themselves the Socialist Workers' Party of Germany. Palestine is our home. Zionists, go back home. Wouldn't that be Israel? And then it said the Zionists is our home. Then they'll kill you if you're Jewish and you go to Israel. This is your Democrat Party. The anti-Israel protest erupts into mayhem in Orthodox Jewish neighborhood in New York City as agitators chant, Zionists go to hell. Zionists go. I'm a Zionist. I believe I'm an Irish Catholic Zionist from Chicago and New York and Washington, D.C. These are a very warlike people. Everything they do is oriented toward violence, isn't it? And warlike rhetoric. They are belligerent, aren't they? Also, not to be outdone, in California, anti-Israel protesters swarm and vandalize the home of a Jewish media super agent and a member of the University of California Board of Regents as well, but that's not important. That had nothing to do with it. The Fox News people have the story, dozens of masked protesters. They love wearing the masks, don't they? Masked protesters swarmed the home of Jay Sewers and vandalized his garage doors. They terrorized his wife, too. Media super agent Jay Sewers, S-U-R-E-S, has slammed a group of anti-Israel protesters who vandalized his California home. They showed up at his home to terrorize him and his wife and surrounded his wife's car on Wednesday in what he said was a frightening ordeal for his family. Sewers, the vice chair of United Talent Agency and a University of California Board of Regents member, told Fox News Digital that the group swarmed the outside of his Brentwood home and plastered his garage door with red handprints along with banners that he said contained death threats. And here are the photographs. Now, the red handprints are part of Hamas's Kill the Jews campaign, and Democrats have been doing the red handprints in Washington for some time now, little fascists that they are. And the red handprints are part of, there was a lynching of 3 Israelis by a mob of Palestinians, and they murdered the 3 Palestinian young men, and they came proudly to the windows of their building. I'm holding my hands up like hands up, don't shoot, which never happened, another Democrat lie. And Michael Brown attacked the police, not the other way around, but the Democrats love the people attacking the police. 6'5", 295-pound, 18-year-old. But the red handprints, they attacked the talent agent's home in Brentwood, Los Angeles, California. The red handprints, see, the terrorists that lynched and murdered and butchered and dismembered the 3 young Israelis, they came to their windows and held their hands up, and their hands were covered in blood, and the crowd cheered ecstatically. They were very, very excited. And the red hands, the blood-drenched hands, became a symbol of killing the Jews. And so when these Democrats showed up at the home of the California talent agent and put the red handprints on his garage doors, that is a symbol of the lynching of the Jews and the butchering of the Jews. Now, Sewers and his wife were at home during the time of the attack, and she tried to leave in her car. The mob, the group, surrounded the vehicle. And he said, when my wife tried to leave the house, they surrounded her car for 15 minutes. She was absolutely terrified. You should legally be allowed to run them over and drag them down the street. Said Sewers, who is a staunch supporter of Israel, so am I, who was influential in the University of California's decision to ban political statements from the university homepage of its departments. That's because they were all anti-Semitic statements. Aren't they amazing? Man, oh man. This is, and these are all people that call themselves liberals, and they are Democrat Party voters. Pretty amazing stuff. Now, Sears United Talent Agency represents a lot of top on-air news personalities as well as big names in entertainment like Heidi Klum and Ludacris and Seth Rogen. And now they're all, and they also, the company's Instagram lists all the famous people they represent. Dozens of masked protesters descended on his family's home, 6:15 a.m. local time, banging drums. They're banging drums in New York, too, snare drums in New York, too, and carrying large banner reading, Jonathan Sears, you will pay until you see your final day. That sounds like a death threat. I think you should be able to open fire on people outside your home at 6:15 a.m. with your family inside that are threatening to kill you until you will pay until your final day. Sounds kind of like Chuck Schumer threatening Supreme Court justices, doesn't it? You will reap the whirlwind. You will pay. This is the Democrat Party is the wheels came off of the Democrat Party long ago.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch. I want to tell you, Kavanaugh. You have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
See, you will pay. No, he's Jewish, but he's not a good Jew. He's a left-winger. He's Socialist Workers Party kind of Jew. Isn't that amazing? Wah, wah, wah. Yep, the protesters strung yellow caution tape on the property's front garden hedge and stuck protests up and posters containing Sears' picture on his garage doors. Diverse now. That's illiterate. Or you will pay. They're amazing. Also, speaking of Chuck Schumer, story today. Schumer spotted posing for photo with Chinese Communist Party official as warning swirl about China influence. Was he with Eric Swalwell? Because Eric Swalwell, he was in the news yesterday, too. This is terrorism. When you go to the homes of a Jewish family, the home of a Jewish family, and you terrorize them, that's terrorism. When you go to the Orthodox Jewish neighborhood in Brooklyn and you terrorize them, that's terrorism. And this is the Democrat Party. Keeping in mind, of course, I got to write my book very soon. I really do. But the history of the Democrat Party, just after the American Civil War, which they created, and their president was Jefferson Davis. He was the Democrat. Abraham Lincoln was the Republican. Then a leader of the Democrat Party, Nathan Bedford Forrest, created the White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, America's oldest terrorist party. The Democrat Party has also been in bed with the Students for a Democratic Society, a terrorist group, the Weather Underground, a terrorist group, the Symbionese Liberation Army, a terrorist group. Name a terrorist group in the history of this country, and it's one step over to the Democrat Party in every instance. And now the Democrat Party are the fascist, Hamas, genocidal anti-Semite party. And honestly, if you're a Jewish Democrat, I'm at 888-630-9625. I'm like Fraser Crane because you need a psychiatrist. Let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Chris calling from Marshall, Virginia. Chris, you are on the Chris Plant Show.
Chris Plant, thank you for taking my call, sir. It's always an honor. I'm calling from the front line of the heartland. I have the popcorn all popped. I cannot wait. I'm eager with anticipation for them to turn their attention at long last to Act Blue, the font of all of the corrupt money.
Act Blue is a left-wing fundraising group entirely in the Democrat Party's camp. And can you think of the kind of person that contributes to Act Blue? Act Blue distributes money to Democrat candidates, and can you think of anybody that contributes to Act Blue?
Well, according to O'Keefe, random strangers that don't know that they're contributing to Act Blue do so hundreds and hundreds of times over and over again, and they're not even aware of it. It's a money laundering scheme.
Well, it is like so many, and look, our EPA is being used by the Democrats as a money laundering scheme to funnel money to anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian, radical left-wing groups that use, and look, this is the old In Europe, they call the environmentalists watermelons. That's one of the nickname slurs for the environmentalists.
Green on the outside and red on the inside. Yes,
exactly
sir.
right. Green on the outside and red on the inside. And that's what we've got here, too. Now,
if you've got just a second, I really can't wait for them to turn their attention to the UN also. I got a great idea for the UN. We turn the UN into something like the Olympics, where the member nations vie to host the UN, and it goes to Burkina Faso for a decade or so, and they've got to build the infrastructure to support it. And so 80% of the bureaucrats leave. We get our real estate back, and the bleep whole country benefits by having infrastructure built to host the UN. It's a win-win-win all the way around.
All the way around. Well, let me tell you that Ryan Wesley Ruth, who was arrested in Florida with a rifle outside the fence line of one of President Trump's golf courses, who was planning on assassinating him, he was an Act Blue donor. Thomas Crooks, who shot President Trump through the ear in Pennsylvania at a rally, an Act Blue donor. That the Democrat Party is a violent party. I mean, again, the first Republican president was Abraham Lincoln. He was assassinated by a Democrat who loved slavery so much. And the Democrat president, Jefferson Davis, that he assassinated Abraham Lincoln. The next two American presidents.
When they don't get their way, they get dangerous, don't they?
They certainly do. The next two American presidents assassinated were also Republicans, assassinated by Democrats. The next American president assassinated was John F. Kennedy, assassinated by a communist or by the permanent bureaucracy. You decide. Maybe the CIA should release their filthy, stinking documents after.
When you go through this litany of all of these violent leftists, I have a suggestion. You ought to play that soundtrack of the shooting of the ballpark. It's such a great. It has the gunfire just going off randomly. You can just have that playing in the background every time we go through the litany of all of these violent leftists that lose their mind.
Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how they don't even have a reputation. But, it was a Bernie Sanders campaign volunteer, James Hodgkinson, that shot and nearly killed Congressman Steve Scalise. And he was there. This is the actual audio of the event. He was there to massacre the entire Republican baseball team. Not that the Democrat Party deserves a reputation for violence. The 1968 Chicago Convention, they were the anti-civil rights movement people. They were Sheriff Bull Connor. They were George Wallace. They were Orville Faubus standing in the schoolhouse door at Central High in Little Rock, Arkansas. The Republican president, Dwight Eisenhower, sent the 101st Airborne in to move the corpulent Democrat governor out of the door at Central High. The Democrat Party is a violent death cult, and now honestly the party of Planned Parenthood and they're not a good organization, I gotta say. And now 3 members of the violent cult-like Zizian group, murderers, transgender murder cult. They're definitely not Trump voters. These are Democrat Party voters. And 3 of these Zizians arrested in Maryland. Death cult. Crazy stuff. I'm telling you. Chris, thank you very much. Thanks for going. And you're right, an Act Blue. And everything is a money laundering operation. How do you think all these Democrats, let's drive around town. If we had a news media, they'd go around and look at the multi-million-dollar homes from Bill Clinton and Barack Obama to their fundraisers living in these $10 million mansions off of Embassy Row. How do they get so rich in politics? And, well, take a look at Joe Biden giving $600 million, creating a slush fund before he walked out the door for environmental radicals. And then you see that the radical climate justice group is funneling money to Hamas that's supposed to be for some environmental group. And the New York Times and CNN say, well, yeah, that's good. That's not corruption. That's not money laundering. That's not a scam. They're not stealing taxpayer dollars. They're saving the environment. Don't you care about the environment? At that point, you know you're dealing with mentally ill people.
Just sit yourself in front of the television because you'll have a lot of popcorn to pop and watch.
It's also a mailbag day here on the Chris Plant Show, a hump day in the Clinton household. And I got a great question from one of our great listeners about Sheryl Crow. She sings songs, and she is big on virtue signaling, and turns out she's a big fat liar. Liar, fraud, self-righteous. And when she got caught, wait till you hear how she responded. It's pretty funny. Great stuff. We still have a ton of President Trump interview yesterday, Elon Musk interview yesterday, same interview. I'll get to that. Right now, let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Joseph calling from Austin, Texas. Josephus, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hello, Chris. I'm happy that you bring up the fact that Senator Schumer is supposed to be a Harvard-educated, scholarly lawyer, and he doesn't even know the Old Testament. He's quoting that incorrectly. You sow the wind and you reap the whirlwind, and that's what the Democrats are doing. They sowed nonsense, and they're reaping the consequences. And your other point about how does a guy that's never held a real job, he went from Harvard Law School up to the State House, down to the Senate, and he's massively wealthy. You know, we need a senatorial office of government. Where did you get your money?
That's a great...
Because all these folks are getting rich. And the guy that's laying up drywall and busting concrete is paying for it.
You are 100% right. The office of where did Nancy Pelosi get her money? Where did Chuck Schumer get his money? And you're right, he went to Harvard undergrad, Harvard Law School. And gosh, isn't that amazing? He's, I don't think he's ever made more than $200,000 a year. But what do you think Chuck Schumer's net worth is? And there should be an office of investigating where members of Congress made all of their money. That's a great idea.
Chris, if you are a minor vice president at J.P. Morgan Chase, which happens to be a company I'm intimately familiar with, you got to put up every stock trade, every bank statement. They have a compliance officer. Those guys up there have nothing.
One online site says his net worth could be $81 million. $81 million. On a government salary, he must be a great investor like Pelosi.